Yeah. So I was debating with myself, do I want coffee first or do I want heat first? And I think I'll have some heat, then I'll have some coffee, and then I'll bring the cold in. But for the first time last night, I woke up in the morning. Well, let me clarify that. I woke up at 1 in the morning. I don't mind waking up at 8 in the morning. That's a perfectly fine time to wake. So I woke up at 8, and then no, I woke up at 1. Got to sleep about 5. Then I woke up at 10 because somebody was using a chainsaw or a hedge trimmer or something. Because it's January. It's a good time to be using the chainsaw, I guess. Yeah. So let's get a fire going. And then once this burns, I'll shift it about, put a log on, coffee with proper milk, not that French rubbish. Milk made from cows that go moo, as opposed to cows that go meh. Why is I've said this before, but supermarket food in France, good quality. Nice selection, good quality, good variety of cheeses, although not for cheddar. But when it comes to milk, it's just like, yeah, here's UHT unrefrigerated milk. That's all you're getting. And some will say, oh no, if you go to like the French equivalent of Les Waitreuses, you will find like 75 centilitres of normal milk, but it costs €5. And it's like, well, it's not wine. Can I have 2 pints? Just 2 pints of milk, that'll do me. I'll have 2 pints of milk. It cost me £1.30 for 2 pints, and it's lovely stuff. And yeah. Is it just me? Or is everybody really struggling at the moment? And I don't just mean, oh yeah, it's winter, everybody's under the weather. I mean, really, really struggling, like for the past 20 years or so. It's just got worse and worse. I've seen a bit of unsympathetic discourse, which I'm going to use this phrase, even though it's a fiction. Let them eat cake. And it's the arrogance of those that aren't suffering, but versus those that are. I think the latest bit of let them eat cake was get into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt for a degree, and then go and work in a fast food franchise like Panda Express, where if you keep at it for 3 years, maybe, possibly, you might get a manager's position where you're in $70,000 a year. And I mean, $70,000 a year sounds all right, but then you look at the cost of living, you look at the average house price, and you realise that $70,000 a year is insufficient, and it's not going to be enough to raise a family, own a nice house, because it's all well and good having a family, but then you live in somewhere crime-ridden, because that's the only place you can afford, because you didn't get the manager role at Panda Express, despite having a degree in microbiology. And it's just it feels a bit insulting when you've been told to go and get these degrees for jobs which are going to be given to those that didn't get into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And some could say, oh well, this happened in 2008 as well with the financial crash then, and I must admit I didn't really notice it then because I was studying, doing microbiology, and then once I got my degree, it was just a case of we don't want you to work in this lab. Thanks. We have postgraduate degrees doing the work of cleaning a petri dish. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? Why do you even need a degree to do it? This idea that, in order to even glance at a laboratory, you need to have a degree. And it's just like, no. I mean, look, if we're going to be pedantic about it, and I would argue that in science pedantry is a virtue, laboratory just means a place to do work. And any person can do, well, I say any person, the vast majority of life can do work. And it doesn't need a degree for it as well. You don't need a degree to clean lab equipment. You don't need a degree to pour potato agar into a dish. And you don't need a degree to put samples into a tray, load the tray up, follow the instructions to, say, cook it. I know they use technical terms like incubate for 30 minutes and then record the results. You don't need degrees for this stuff. I did by the way, I it's annoying really because degrees have become they've become a substitute for IQ tests because IQ tests were deemed racist, and that is true. But at the same time, an IQ test is a useful tool for telling like how quickly can somebody grasp a concept and how specialised they can be. We have so many credentials to do even the most basic tasks these days. I was doing a show last night about the last hangman, Arthur Pierpoint, Albert Pierpoint, I forget his name already. And he spent 4 days practicing with a dummy on how to properly tie the knot and do a hanging, because it's quite an involved skill, and in order to do it correctly, there is a table calculated of drops, because if you do it incorrectly, the victim ends up being strangled, which is a slow lingering death. And so yeah, Albert Pierpoint spent 4 days training, and then his uncle, who was also a hangman, a hang people person operative, took him around as an assistant, and then after a year or so of doing that, he did hanging himself. And I just thought, if such a position was available today, what would the amount of credentials you would need in order to do that job? How many years of public service degrees would you need, and then experience in the prison industry, and maybe working with coroners to understand anatomy and what happens when you botch a hanging versus when you do it right. Um, how many years would it be before you actually just say, okay, you've proved you can do it, snap to it. And that's the problem we have with society now. There's just far too many credentials needed to do things, and regulations. It reminds me of a phrase I heard saying, like, a dying empire surrounds itself with laws like a dying man surrounds himself with remedies. And I think I can understand that. You just put more and more laws on in the hope that it'll hopefully fix the problem, and it doesn't, because the underlying symptom's not been treated. And one could argue, they could say, oh, well, look, the regulations is what keeps us from anarchy. But I just think to myself, would anarchy be much worse? I don't know. I think once I've had my coffee and I've warmed up a bit, I've got some food in my belly, I'll probably be a bit more cheerful. But it does disappoint me, this idea that the only recourse that people who are now just going into university, the ones in their 20s, are being told to flip burgers or put the vegetables in a microwave. And it's like, well, what was the point in getting a degree then? Oh, there wasn't any benefit for me. It was just to keep this Ponzi scheme going. All right. I'm very glad I didn't pay tuition fees. They said, oh, do you want to continue? It's like, yeah, how much? Oh, only £9,800. I'm like, no, I'm good, thanks. Oh, you're throwing away your future. Like, no, I'm throwing away your future, mate. Find some other punter. Find some other Rube. Find some other Mark. Oh, student debt's the best debt to get into. It's like, well, objectively, you're wrong. Look, my specialty's microbiology, and it's not. I wanted to do chemistry, but through various twists of fate, I ended up doing microbiology, which is still interesting. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. But without being any specialist in economics, I'm pretty sure the best debt you can get into is a mortgage on a house or some other property. Because let's say, for whatever reason, you spend, oh, just as an example, 5% on £100,000 mortgage. So you paid off 5% of it. So that's, what's that? Is that £5,000? Or is that £500? £100,000, 1% of that would be, well, 10,000 would be 10%, 1,000 would be 1%, so 500 would be 0.5. So you've paid off 5%, so you've paid off £5,000 of it. All right, the property's gone up in value, you sell it. So let's say your property's now worth, you bought it for 100,000, it's now worth 110,000. Oh, well, here's the refund on your mortgage. You now have £5,500. Oh, that's great. Okay, let's say my £9,800 student tuition fee. I've decided actually that this X-ray crystallography is not right for me. Can I get a refund on it? No, we'll have the whole fee, and if you bankrupt yourself, the debt still follows you. Oh, okay. Oh, and the interest is going to go up for the rest of your life. All right. But don't worry, if you're under a certain income threshold, you never have to pay it off. Oh, I see. So that's encouraging me to either get lucky and find one of those rare jobs that pays a decent amount of money in the United Kingdom, or to live as perpetual underclass, to not pay the debt. Right. Yeah, you know what? I don't think there's that many lucrative jobs in X-ray crystallography, and I'm not a super genius, so I'm not going to be inventing like a nanotechnology self-assembling factory. And if I did, the Chinese would just copy it. So, uh, yeah. Point being is, I was told this scam, and it really rankled me. Of just like, oh, student debt's the best debt to get into. I'm just like, well, that's a lie, and you're lying to me. And like, look, I'm studying microbiology here. I'm not doing a degree in humanities or sociology. I'm not an idiot. Why are you lying to me? Well, why why are you lying and thinking, oh yeah, I'll get away with this lie? Is it just one of those things you say to yourself, like safe and effective? Just, oh, if I say this lie and if I say it convincingly, maybe the others will buy my bullshit. And it's like, oh, well, actually, those lies work with people that are not autistic. But then I'm thinking to myself, yeah, but I'm doing a STEM degree, and by the nature of it being a scientific process and investigation, that's, it's going to attract a high proportion of autistics. I mean, I guess the scam works because even autistics have fear of missing out, but it's like it's a Ponzi scheme, and I didn't want to be part of the Ponzi scheme. I was happy to do my education for free, and I was like, look, I'll see where I can get with this because theoretically I should have an advantage over others. But all my degree got me was a job in the call centre, and then I worked in the supermarket whilst I was figuring out what I wanted to do in my life. And and I became a manager of an electronics company, and I hated that because I just wanted to do the assembly and teaching people. I didn't want to manage customers. I hated that. Absolutely hated it. Oh, can you give me a deal? It's like, look, we've got prices, and it's not as if I can just go to the suppliers and say, oh, hey, this really annoying customer is asking if I can do it for half the price. Can you magically make your components half the price so we can maintain a profit so that this business can continue? Yeah, I hated customers. I decided to become a lorry driver, and I think that was a good idea. But really, I should be working in the lab somewhere on X-ray crystal. I don't like X-ray crystallography. If I was working in a lab somewhere, what would I want to do? Well, it'd probably be chemistry, and it probably would be X-ray crystallography. But maybe it'd be the chemistry of oil, or well, petrochemistry as they called it, or maybe I'd get into some sort of engineering. Engineering's fun. Well, I enjoy engines, but that didn't happen. And it, the reason I'm saying this is because this is not an exception. This is, in fact, probably the rule. There's probably a few million. Well, actually, there's probably close to about, in Europe and America, there's probably close to about 30 million, and they're mostly going to be men, because I know the way the bell the bell curve curves for those in my IQ bracket. It's mostly going to be about 30 million men of my intelligence or greater, and they're probably in a very similar position to myself, and some of them will be more successful than others, but the vast majority of them are woefully underutilized, and they're not furthering the cause of mankind. You're not really being a major benefit to Well, put it this way: yes, you are a benefit if you're sweeping a broom, or if you're driving a lorry, or if you're cooking somebody dinner. You are of benefit to mankind. But if you have an IQ in excess of 130 and you're doing a menial job like that because, for whatever circumstance, you're buggered, it's just it's holding all of mankind back, and it'll probably lead to another dark ages. And who's to blame? Is it the government? Not really. I mean, parasites do what parasites do. Is it the fault of those with the high IQs? Not really. They don't understand human interaction that well, and the ones that do are psychopaths, and they squander people. They see them as expendable resources. So whose fault is it? I don't know, and also I don't know if that's really that useful. What's the solution? Well, get rid of a lot of credentials, and get rid of all these prerequisites people need to get into industry. Make it based on merit. Actually, like, can they operate this machinery? Can your operative pour potato agar solution into a petri dish and then incubate it for 30 minutes at 75 degrees centigrade? If so, give them the job. Also, free association. I think that would help a lot. If you didn't have quotas of you must have this certain ratio of demographics in your society or company, that would probably help people a lot. They let their guard down. They'd be able to cooperate better. They would have mutual societies and interests. But then you could say, but those at the top of the Ponzi scheme don't want those at the bottom organising, because then their foundation crumbles and they lose their power. So maybe there is someone to blame. And of course they'll have the enforcers, and they'll pay them a reasonable pension, not a great pension, but reasonable enough that they'll fight tooth and nail to keep the status quo as it is. So you have your pyramid, your Ponzi scheme, and it just keeps on going until one day it doesn't, because it's unsustainable and it completely comes crashing down. And I wish it wasn't that way. And I wish it could be explained to the parasites that be that, look, if you just let people have autonomy and don't tax them to the gills, you will get far better standard of living and wealth. But they're not interested in that. I am convinced they enjoy people suffering. They like being the king of the shit heap. Unfortunate, really, but that's the way things are, and I can't change it. Maybe the youth can change it. Who knows? My generation wasn't able to succeed in that. Maybe yours will. I don't know. It depends really or not whether the conditions are tolerable. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to have a bit of bread with it as well. Yeah, milky coffee and bread. And then I'm going to get some coal in. And if I feel so inclined, I should do the washing up as well. I've put away the dishes today, so that's made me feel better. Anyway, I think I've talked long enough now. Do you agree with what I've said? Have I missed out a point? Could I have made this more concise? I believe I could. But it takes me this long to just talk it all out and have a think about things. So I apologise for the long-winded ramble. Yeah. Toodle pip.